Stupid dog! You made me look bad!
Frosted Lucky Charms, dramatically delicious!
That's the same guy. For the final 19 episodes of Courage the Cowardly Dog, the man yelling at Courage was the same man who'd spent the previous 29 years telling you that cereal was magic. His name is Arthur Anderson, and he's not even the weirdest thing I'm gonna tell you about today. So real quick, what's up? Welcome back to the channel, and I gotta level with you before we get into this one. There are basically a billion Courage the Cowardly Dog videos on YouTube right now, and every single one has the same 5 thumbnails, and every single one tells you that King Ramses is actually terrifying, you guys. Yeah, we know, I know. Hell, I know so much that I did that same video that everybody else did years ago. So I'm not making that video today. Instead, I went and dug up the stuff John R. Dilworth has actually said in interviews. The production stuff most people don't bother to look up, and one piece of crossover trivia that should have been the top comment on every Courage video for the last decade and somehow isn't.
Stupid dog!
So first off, who the hell is John R. Dilworth? And very simply, it is the guy who made Courage the Cowardly Dog. You know, most of these Courage videos talk about John R. Dilworth like he showed up to Cartoon Network in 1999 with a stack of storyboards, and that was it. That is not the case at all. Dilworth is actually an independent animator out of New York City. He founded his studio Stretch Films back in 1991, and the studio is still running today. The guy was never a Cartoon Network staffer. He was an indie animation lifer who got a cartoon picked up, and once you know that, the entire show kind of makes more sense. So here's fact 1, and this one's gonna trip some people up. Dilworth didn't make Courage the Cowardly Dog for kids. And I know that sounds a little ridiculous. And I don't mean it skews dark ridiculous. I mean, the guy has said it on the record, direct quote. IndieWire 25th anniversary interview from November 2024. Dilworth said, and I quote, "I never made the show for kids. I just entered my 12-year-old knickers and I made a cartoon." Knickers are pants, by the way, for anybody that's like, doesn't know old-timey language. John R. Dilworth is kind of old. His models weren't 90s kids TV. His models were Warner Brothers, MGM shorts from the 1930s, the 1950s. We're talking the lineage that gave us old Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry. So every time you watched an episode of the show and thought, you know, this kind of feels like an old Tom and Jerry short that found God in a Fruitian analyst, you were kind of right. It was being built like one. Fact number 2. And this is the one I think is gonna ruffle some feathers, because the big YouTube narrative on this show is, oh, Cartoon Network didn't get it. Dilworth had to smuggle everything past the execs. The suits almost killed Courage. That's wrong. That is the exact opposite of what happened. The execs actually left him alone. 3 Cartoon Network creative executives gave Dilworth basically 0 notes on the show. And I am gonna name them because they kind of deserve the credit that they have never gotten. Linda Semensky, Mike Lazo, Jay Bastian. Dilworth's own words on working with that team is this, and I quote, "The privilege of creating with no compromises." Linda Semensky was VP of Original Animation at Cartoon Network at the time. And Dilworth has literally said in interviews that Linda was the champion of Courage at the network. He honored her by having Muriel play the sitar on the show because Linda plays the sitar in real life. That's the kind of relationship we are talking about here. And Mike Lazo, yeah, that Mike Lazo, the guy who went on to run Adult Swim, that checks out, doesn't it? And Jay Bastian was executive in charge of production. These 3 are the reason this show looks the way it looks. And they get 0 algorithm credit because executives left an artist alone is a way worse YouTube hook than executives almost ruined it. Sorry guys, sometimes the suits were the reason. I don't like to admit that either, but occasionally it does happen. At least it did decades ago. It feels like it happens less and less nowadays. And that brings me to fact 3, and this one explains everything about why the show feels the way it feels. Dilworth didn't think of Courage as a TV show. He treated every single 11-minute segment as its own independent short film. And that's not me being cute, that is him in his own words. Here's the quote. "I didn't see a difference between doing a TV show and doing an independent film. I looked at every segment of Courage as an independent film." And once you know that, the whole show kind of just clicks into place. Why The Mask feels like a completely different show than Queen of the Black Puddle. Why King Ramses is a horror short and Robot Randy is a sitcom. Why some episodes lean stop motion and some lean CGI and some lean live action. It wasn't inconsistent. Every segment was its own film, its own rules, its own tone, its own visual language. The man wasn't running a writer's room, he was running an indie animation studio that just happened to have a Cartoon Network contract. Here we go. My specialty, saying words I can't pronounce. Nietzsche.
Nietzsche.
That's way easier. That is so much easier. Fact 4, and I promise this is not film bro brain rot. The character of Courage the dog is grounded in Nietzsche. I know how that sounds. Just stay with me for a second. Dilworth ties courage directly to Nietzsche's idea of neighborly love, which is the idea that real virtue isn't superhero bravery. Real virtue is the tiny, everyday, unglamorous stuff. Fairness, mildness, putting yourself out for people who actively don't deserve it. And if you think about that premise for like 6 seconds, that's the show. And here again is the actual quote from Dilworth, again from IndieWire. They got a lot of interviews, clearly. The thing about Courage, without getting too analytical, is his love of Muriel and his willingness to put himself in a very difficult positions to be of service of another, even if that other is a villain. And that little phrase, even if that other is a villain, is doing so much work because, yeah, Eustace, for 52 episodes, a dog keeps saving the guy who actively hates him. That's basically Courage the Cowardly Dog. And the wild part, this framing didn't exist publicly until November 2024. So if you've ever seen a pre-2024 Courage video that brought up Nietzsche, they didn't find that. They invented it. So if anybody did that, props to you. On to fact 5. The show wasn't just hand-drawn animation. It was hand-drawn plus stop motion, plus paper cutout, plus puppets, plus live action, plus CGI, and usually all in the same episode on a 1999 Cartoon Network weekly schedule. Dilworth's quote, again, the same IndieWire piece, "I made it a personal challenge to achieve integration among the varying mediums and have believability to show illusion is multidisciplinary." Now, you guys, this is essentially what Leica Studios is doing now. You know, the studio behind Coraline, Paranorman, Box Trolls, things like that, with 2001 tools on a weekly kids cartoon budget. That's insane. And it's honestly also insane that it wasn't talked about more at the time. On to fact 6, and this one matters for the rest of the story. You'd assume something this ambitious was made at some massive network-run production house, right? Well, you'd be wrong. Because when the 1996 pilot, The Chicken from Outer Space, aired on Hanna-Barbera's What a Cartoon anthology, the deal was the same one that gave you Dexter's Lab, that gave you Powerpuff Girls. If your short got picked up, Hanna-Barbera produced the series. And Dilworth said no. He insisted the show stay at his own studio, Stretch Films, in New York City. The animation itself got outsourced to Wang Film Productions in Taipei. Season 1 and 4, Wang did solo. Season 2 and 3, it was split with their sister studio, Cuckoo's Nest. But creative control stayed in Dilworth's building, on Dilworth's terms. You wanna know why the show feels authored? Because the author kept the keys. That is a wildly unusual win to come out of a 1999 network negotiation.
Stupid dog!
All right, so let's talk about voice casting, because the story behind Muriel's voice is one of my favorite show business anecdotes ever. Thea White, who voiced Muriel for all 52 episodes, was retired when Courage happened. She'd been an actress, she got married, she became a librarian, done, moved on with her life. But then a production company called The White House, looking for someone with a Scottish accent for a new cartoon. And here's the kicker. They weren't calling for her, they were calling for her Scottish husband, Andy, because the household was the household of a working musician with Scottish industry contacts. And Thea, bless her, picked up the phone. Here's from her 2021 Hollywood Reporter obituary. "I don't know anyone, but I used to be an actress, and my husband is a Scot, and I can do the accent, so why don't I audition?" And she got it. 52 episodes. Every kid who watched this show in the early 2000s, that voice was the warmest sound on television, and she only got the part because she answered a phone call meant for her husband.
Courage, what is it?
Stupid dog!
Courage, do you mind repeating that?
Now, let's bookmark the husband, because you're gonna need him in about 90 seconds.
Stupid dog!
So sit down for this one. Maybe. I don't know. It's your choice. Because I genuinely can't believe nobody has made a video about this, at least not that I've been able to find. Thea White's husband, the Andy White from the last section, was a Scottish session drummer, a professional. And on September 11th, 1962, the Beatles walked into EMI Studios to record their first single, Love Me Do. And the producer, George Martin, and his deputy, Ron Richards, they sat Ringo Starr out of the take. They brought in a session guy to play the drums instead. That session guy was Andy White. Ringo played tambourine on the recording that actually got pressed for the album and the US single. Oh, and the B-side, P.S. I Love You, Andy White played bongos on that one. Ringo got the maracas. That is a real sentence. So let's stitch the sentence back together now. The woman who voiced Muriel on Courage the Cowardly Dog was married to the session drummer who replaced Ringo Starr on the Beatles' first single. And the way that she got the role, the way we even know her voice, is that the cartoon producers called her house looking for him. So the voice of Muriel got Muriel because a cartoon wanted to talk to a Beatle adjacent drummer. It's actually some insane lore.
Stupid dog!
So now that we've dropped the Beatles bomb, let's stay on the voice cast for a second because there are two more wins here. So remember the 1996 pilot, The Chicken from Outer Space? Well, every voice in that short, every single one, including all of the sound effects, was performed by one guy, Howard Hoffman. And the voice he gave Courage in his single line of dialogue, a Jackie Mason impression, and I'm not making that up, full-on Borscht Belt, 75-year-old stand-up Jackie Mason. When Cartoon Network greenlit the series 3 years later, Hoffman re-auditioned and they said no. The network just didn't want a Courage who sounded like he was about to tell you about his ex-wife's cooking. They wanted nervy, jittery, high-pitched, and that's when they brought in Marty Grabstein, the Courage voice that you know. Allegedly, Grabstein landed it in a 2-minute audition after roughly 350 other actors had tried.
I've gotta say, Muriel, it may be a good night for you. You'll be in a warm bed.
In an alternate timeline, this show stars a dog who sounds like Jackie Mason, and honestly, I kind of want to see it. Now, Eustace, let's talk about that guy from the beginning of the video, because here's the part the cold open didn't tell you. Eustace Bagge was actually voiced by 2 different actors across the show. Lionel Wilson voiced Eustace from 1999 through the middle of 2001, the first 33 episodes across season 1 through 3. And this is wild. He was 75 years old when he started. The man came out of half retirement to be the cranky old farmer in your weird CGI nightmare cartoon. He then retired from the role in August 2001 due to an illness and sadly passed away on April 30th, 2003, which obviously meant they needed to replace him. And his replacement, you already met him at the start of the video. That was Arthur Anderson. Mercury Theater radio actor, started working with Orson Welles in the 30s when he was still a teenager. 29 years of Lucky Charms commercials between 1963 and 1992, and the final 19 episodes of Courage the Cowardly Dog, episodes 34 through 52. Anderson sadly passed away in 2016 at the age of 93, and here's the part I think is genuinely beautiful about it. The handoff was so clean, nobody noticed. You can watch the whole show right now, and unless someone tells you, you can't really tell where Wilson stops and Anderson starts. And when you actually think about it, that is an absolute masterpiece in voice direction.
Stupid dog!
This next fact genuinely makes me a little mental, so stay with me here. In July 2010, Warner Home Video put out season 1 of Courage the Cowardly Dog on DVD as part of their Cartoon Network Hall of Fame line. And then the complete series DVD didn't come out until October 2nd, 2018. And on those DVDs, and this is the part I really want you to sit with, Warner put absolutely nothing. No commentaries, no interviews, no behind the scenes, no featurettes, just the episodes, which is insane for a show with this much of a cult following. And think about all the facts we're talking about here today. There's endless information, endless details, endless little friggin' pieces that they could put in. We couldn't even get a Dilworth interview into the full complete series. One of the most iconic shows in Cartoon Network history. Make it make sense, Cartoon Network. So you know what Dilworth did? He and one of his Courage staff writers, William Hohauser, who wrote a bunch of episodes between 1999 and 2002, just went and recorded their own commentary tracks themselves. Riff track style, audio only, meant to be played in sync with the episodes. And they posted them on YouTube for free. These are the DVD commentaries Warner could not be bothered to pay for, made by the actual creator of the show and one of its staff writers sitting there on the internet for anybody who wants them. The Animation Scoop wrote it up back in November of 2016. And here's the part that breaks my brain, and I am not exaggerating. I checked most of these commentary videos. They have tiny view counts. hundreds, in some case, double-digit hundreds. Meanwhile, the Is King Ramses Real videos pull millions sometimes. And I'm just like, what do you mean? Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that it's obviously way easier to watch a single video about a topic that you very fondly remember compared to finding the YouTube channel of a creator who is doing an audio only thing and you have to sync it up. Like, I get it, but they exist. That's, I think, what blows my mind the most. But seriously, Warner Brothers, you released the box set. You couldn't take a meeting with the creator of the show to give him a microphone for an afternoon? I mean, he literally did it for free in his own apartment because you wouldn't pay him. And then nobody's watching these commentaries because nobody knows they exist, because they're not where the algorithm sends people. Thank you, Warner. I am truly moved at your breathtaking and absolutely genius marketing that you have going on. So if you're making a Courage video in 2026, please go check out these commentaries. They do not get enough love. I mean, hell, I didn't even know they existed before making this video. Links in the description. The man made them for us. The least that we can do is press play.
Stupid dog!
So moving on to the next fact. Do you remember earlier when I said Dilworth treated every Courage segment like its own short film? Well, he wasn't kidding. Between 2001 and 2002, while he was finishing the final season of Courage, Dilworth had completed an independent hand-drawn short called The Mousicist, his 12th animated film. It won Best of Show at the Asafa East Animation Festival, Best Film at the Muriel Festival in Italy, Bronze at the Kalamazoo Animation Festival, and in 2002, it toured the country with Spike and Mike's Sick and Twisted Festival of Animation. So while he was running the biggest platform of his career, he was also making and winning awards with independent shorts just on the side. You guys, this isn't a fun fact. This is just a personality trait at this point. Dilworth just constantly makes short films. It is what he does. Courage was just the one that happened to pay the rent for a few years. And honestly, if you take one thing out of this video, let it be that. Because the more you look at this guy, the more Courage makes sense.
Stupid dog!
Now, there was a fact that we were going to include, and I decided to cut it, but I want to talk about it anyways. So there's a fact that circulates on every Courage video on the internet, that the episode The Mask was banned in France. And I really wanted to put this one in. I tried to source it. Every single trail leads back to the same fan wikis citing each other in a circle. There's no French broadcaster mentioning it. There's no press. There's no primary source that I could find anywhere. So out it goes. It's not a fact. If you do find a primary source though, please drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to know. Until then, it's not in this video. So here's what I keep coming back to with the show. Courage the Cowardly Dog exists because a New York indie animator refused to let Hanna-Barbera produce it, because 3 Cartoon Network executives gave him 0 notes. And because his librarian wife answered a phone call that was meant for her Beatle-adjacent drummer husband. Every single thing about this show ended up the way it ended up basically as a fluke. And the man who made it has spent the last 20 years making more shorts than anyone is paying attention to, and uploading commentary tracks Warner couldn't be bothered to commission. So go watch the commentaries. They're free. The link's in the description. You don't have to do it today. Bookmark them. Watch them one week. That's all I want you to do.